It's crunch time at work and you need to bring wings to your workday. Visit redbull.com/gettingitdone and answer a couple questions about your work style to get a Spotify customized playlist tuned to your productivity. Plus, score a can of Red Bull on us while you go from to-do to done. And remember, Red Bull gives you wings. Supplies are limited. Terms apply. Visit the website for more information.
Pros, just because something on the job runs out doesn't mean you have to. Order it on the Lowe's app. My Lowe's Pro Rewards members get free same-day delivery on eligible orders over $25. Get the fasteners, hardware, or tools you need to keep the job moving. Order by 2 p.m. and get eligible in-stock items delivered right to your job site by 8 p.m. Members get more at Lowe's. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Subject to availability. Restrictions and terms at lowes.com/shipping terms. Subject to change.
For the News and Observer, I'm Kyle Ingram, politics reporter and today's host of Under the Dome. I'm filling in for our Capitol Bureau Chief, Dawn Vaughn, who is your usual host, and I'm joined today by our Washington correspondent, Danielle Battaglia. We're going to talk about all that's been going on in D.C., where North Carolina has recently become a pretty big component of all the news up there. We'll get into Thom Tillis' decision not to run for re-election, the effects the One Big Beautiful Bill could have here in North Carolina, and an upcoming confirmation vote on a controversial nominee from our state. So, Danielle, welcome to the show. Let's start off with what's been going on with Tillis.
So much going on. And of course, they waited until I was on vacation to do all of this. But Senator Tillis has made the decision not to run for re-election and to retire from the U.S. Senate, which I think, everyone's saying is shocking. And I would say is shocking. But I kind of saw this coming in a way. We've seen Senator Tillis take a lot of very safe votes when it came to nominees that Trump had put in for his cabinet positions. But I wondered once we got into those big policy issues if they would still get along. And this was the first major piece of policy, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, where we saw that relationship break down. And that led to his Senate demise.
So, Tillis has already broke with the party several notable times. But now that he's not running for re-election and he can't be threatened with a primary, is this going to be a completely different dynamic for him? Do you think he's going to go renegade even more?
I've been calling him Dark Tillis because I think we saw a new side of him where, he's a little bit more flippant and a little bit more mouthy, which Tillis has never been one to be like a wallflower. Like, he's going to say what he thinks and he is going to do what he wants to do. The dynamic has changed because they can't hold the election over his head. But he also said, and I think it's very notable, he said it to Jake Tapper last week on CNN, that one of the reasons he made this decision was not because of the threat itself, but basically he wanted to remove from the table that they could hold something from his head or he was making decisions because of his upcoming reelection. I wanted to make it clear that any vote he made was a vote on his conscience and not because of something going on with re-election. And I think that's really notable because he is somebody that does what he wants to do. And you've seen that through his last term, his current term. He has made Republicans mad. He's been censured by his own party for different bills, from supporting LGBTQ rights to marriage, and also for helping with gun legislation and passing the largest piece of gun legislation in 30 years.
Mm-hmm. So, throughout his tenure, Republicans have been mad at him. Democrats have been mad at him. What does that mean for this wide open Senate race in 2026, where we still have no, certainty on who the candidates are going to be?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Senator Tillis would be an interesting candidate in the primary. He would have a lot of trouble depending on who that Republican came in. Like, if Laura Trump was running against him, you're going to see, possible those far right voters coming after him, and he could struggle in a primary. I think he was very confident he could win the primary, and they have not put up an actual candidate yet to run. On the Democratic side, because he is a moderate, he could have issues with, or the Democrats could have an issue there because he does vote with Democrats at times and works with Democrats across the aisle. And so that could, your more middle of the road Democrats could support him in that regard. So now you've got this open field. We're waiting for people like former Governor Roy Cooper possibly getting in. We've heard Laura Trump possibly getting in. We've heard Michael Whatley. We've heard who's both of them lead the RNC, the Republican National Committee. These bigger names that weren't being floated on the periphery, they're now like front and center of potential people that we could be hearing from. So it's everyone's guessing game who and when and if they're going to get into this race.
And this would be a big pickup for Democrats, right? If they could flip this. I mean, how does that play out in terms of the majority in 26?
Yeah, both chambers have such a small majority, and there's a lot of concern right now about whether they can keep either chamber, so the Senate or the House, because of that small majority, especially with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act passing. There's concern that, especially this cutaway at social safety net programs like Medicaid and SNAP benefits, which are known as food stamps to a lot of people. And so that could have repercussions in this upcoming election. And we're going to see Democrats using that against Republicans a lot. There are so few seats between Republicans and Democrats that if they lose just a handful of people, it could go right back to the Democrats leading either chamber. So with Senator Tillis in particular, that is a seat that Republicans wanted to maintain. It's one reason I think we haven't seen President Trump go after Tillis when they have butted heads in this past couple, like 6 months. And so, now they have, they put themselves into a hole where they don't have a candidate right now, and they're trying to figure out who's going to run.
Yeah, and didn't Tillis warn in his interview with CNN that the big beautiful bill could be, what did he call it? It could be Trump's
the next Obamacare or Trump's Obamacare, because Obamacare, even though it was very popular with Democrats, the Republicans used it against them, and they were able to flip the majority back to Republicans for almost a decade. And so that's what Tillis is warning. You could have the same repercussions with this one. Both were healthcare policies, and he's saying, you might have just done yourself in, basically.
So let's talk more about that bill that caused this rupture. I won't ask you to explain all of it because I know there's a million things in there, but what are you looking at specifically for how it'll affect North Carolina?
Yeah, so those social safety net programs are like the biggest factor I think that people are looking at right now, especially with Medicaid. That's what made Tillis concerned, which is very interesting since it took so long for Republicans to get on board with Medicaid coverage and expanding Medicaid in North Carolina. And ironically, the cuts to Medicaid is basically the same number of people will be affected as were affected by expansion. And so we're looking at more than 600,000 people possibly losing healthcare coverage. You're hearing Republicans say these are people who are cheating the system by not working, by being, people in the country without permission, that group of people, but that's not really what's going on. They are kicking off people who this program was made for. And so there is great concern about the number of people that will lose healthcare coverage. On top of that, SNAP benefits are going to be affected, and those they help with people with disabilities. They help with children in schools getting nutritional food benefits, and we're cutting them out from that. And so there's a lot of concern about these types of programs and the ramifications it will have on North Carolina not having them or having to change them. Also with Medicaid, because of the cuts, North Carolina is going to have to take on a big chunk of the cost of it. And so they're either going to have to figure out, do we get rid of the program altogether? Do we take on the cost of it, but cut somewhere else in our budget? Or do we raise taxes? So there's a lot of things that could trickle down that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah. And this all comes as, North Carolina lawmakers have not reached a deal on a comprehensive state budget. They adjourned for summer break without coming to a deal on that. You have seen both of the top legislative leaders come out and say that they support the One Big Beautiful Bill, but we haven't really seen anything definitive from them about whether they have a plan to make up some of the shortfalls that are going to be coming to the state. When are we going to start to see those shortfalls?
I don't expect to actually see it in action until after the midterm elections. That's done by design so that Republicans can kind of have a cushion. So when we go into a vote, people aren't thinking top of mind, this affected me and I need to change my vote to Democrats, as a what am I trying to say? Basically a punishment for what you did to my own livelihood. So I don't expect to see those kick in until post midterm. And then you'll start seeing more of the ramifications come in and more people being affected. And that is absolutely by design so that, they aren't affected.
Mhm. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about an upcoming confirmation vote in Congress, and we'll get to our picks for headliners of the week.
Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm politics reporter Kyle Ingram here with our Washington correspondent Danielle Battaglia. Before the break, we were talking about Senator Thom Tillis and his decision with the One Big Beautiful Bill. For the rest of the show, we want to talk about what's going on with an upcoming confirmation vote with a pretty interesting nominee from North Carolina. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, so it's Tony Tata. You might remember him as the North Carolina Department of Transportation Secretary. He was also the superintendent of Wake County Public Schools. So depending on where you're at in North Carolina, you might remember him for different reasons. He also writes Tom Clancy-style novels. I believe he's written 13 of them. He was nominated by President Donald Trump to be Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. And basically, this is one of the top jobs at the Department of Defense. But he's very notable for many reasons. In 2020, he was also nominated for a job under President Trump, and it didn't go well for him. He actually had to pull out of his nomination right before the Senate confirmation hearing because 51 organizations came out against him and said he was racist against Black people. He had called President Barack Obama a terrorist leader and Islam the most oppressive, violent religion. And he also was accused of trying to segregate Black, Latino, and disabled students within Wake County Public Schools. And so there was a ton of controversy that surrounded this nomination, which could be why in February, when President Trump nominated him again, we didn't really hear anything about it. He didn't do a Truth Social post. He didn't send out a press release. It was all very hush-hush. He came up for his confirmation hearing in May. Senator Thom Tillis supported it. He came out and spoke actually on his behalf, saying, I know you're going to have a ton of questions about what Tata said back in 2020. Actually, it was in 2018. And Tata also acknowledged that he had made controversial statements and reminded them he had sent an apology letter then about what he had said and said again, he's sorry. And he, learns from his mistakes and that he plans to lead effectively.
So has he toned it down since 2020?
It doesn't sound like it from what you were just telling me.
Well, I'm not sure when those tweets were from, but yeah, definitely a history of some interesting tweets there. But I know you said Tillis was initially supportive of his nomination. Is that going to remain the case now that Tillis has been unchained a little bit with the threat of a primary not hanging over him?
I haven't heard Tillis come out against him at all. I think that he'll still have that support there. I'm watching Tillis on a couple other nominations this week that are going into hearings, not into a confirmation vote. But I actually expect that Tata will soar through this confirmation vote on, I thought it would be tonight. I think it might actually be on Tuesday night. We're recording this on Monday. But I think he's going to soar through with the Republicans backing him. Democrats might be opposed to him, but I don't think he'll have much trouble getting this confirmation and then be sworn in.
Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be the same, drama that we had earlier in the administration where Tillis was the one to watch, especially with Hegseth. You also wrote about a different person that he actually did effectively block from being nominated. Was that the prosecutor?
That was Ed Martin, who's a prosecutor. He was up for a top DC position, and Tillis did not like that he had basically come out in defense of January 6th prisoners, saying, that they didn't deserve their punishments for what they did on January 6th. That doesn't sit well with Thom Tillis, and that's something I'm watching this week. On Thursday, there's another vote with somebody who had similar takes, and Tillis so far says that he's okay with it, but people are kind of outraged because that doesn't sit well with the whole Ed Martin vote. And so I'm watching that pretty carefully on Thursday to see what happens in the confirmation hearing with Tillis and see where he stands.
All right. Well, while our legislature is on break and not much is happening here, still lots to look forward to and watch in Capitol Hill. Let's move on now to our headliners of the week. I'll start in that you may have thought the Jefferson Griffin Supreme Court saga was over. And while he did concede defeat in the race and Allison Riggs has been installed in her place on the Supreme Court, some of the issues that were brought up during that case are persisting, specifically the claim that brought up the biggest number of voters in Jefferson's Griffin challenge, which dealt with voters who don't have a social security number or driver's license in the state's database. After Griffin conceded, the Trump administration sued over that and said that we should be correcting those records. And the State Board of Elections has agreed to come up with a plan to try and get those records into the state's database by contacting almost 200,000 voters. What happened last week, though, was that the DNC sent a letter to the State Board of Elections saying that they're worried this plan could lead to legitimate voters having their registrations canceled. And they threatened to sue the State Board of Elections if they go through with this plan. So we're still waiting for more clarity on how this is going to actually work. We know that it's going to involve mailers being sent out to hundreds of thousands of voters, and about half of them could have to face more hurdles to making their ballots count if they don't respond to this mailing. So something to keep an eye on and see, what the ramifications of this Supreme Court ballot battle continue to be. What about you? What's your headliner of the week, Danielle?
I think it's all anyone was talking about yesterday. It was the 1-year anniversary of the attempted assassination of President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. And, at least one rally goer was killed in that. That was a big day just for me in my career. I had a really bad feeling something was going to happen that day. I don't know why, but my parents could sense that something was off with me. And I had told them that was what I was thinking, that just something was going to go wrong and I was going to be called into work. It also was the start of RNC, and it just changed the whole dynamic of the week that we had, the coverage that we did. I just never thought we'd still be covering assassinations of U.S. presidents in 2024, and hope we don't repeat that again.
Yeah, very surprising time. And then just a few weeks after the initial, there was a second attempt.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today. It was great to have you on the show, Danielle. And for the News and Observer, I'm Kyle Ingram. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Sign up for our political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.